Hello and welcome again. Today, in the Industrial Engineering 6th semester subject of Mechanical Department, BTech Mechanical Engineering, we'll be discussing standard costing and cost controlling process. So, in Industrial Engineering, we have learned about various aspects of uh, industrial engineering. So, today we'll be discussing standard costing and variance analysis. So what is standard costing, how it takes place, what is the variance, all these things will be discussed, all these aspects will be discussed in today's lecture. So first of all, we must be knowing what is the objective. So define standard cost and explain how standard costs are developed and compute a standard unit cost. So what is the background? Why these standard costs are calculated? Because different manufacturers are there in the market. So everyone would be selling its product on different rates. So in order to uniform the different rates and to give a better control to the uh, supplier, manufacturer, as well as consumer, we must be we must be having a standard norm so that all the products are covered in this standard norm and they get uniform. The consumer gets the uniform cost, uniform rates of all the commodities that do they use or consume. At the same time, manufacturers have standard costing methods, so they would be more comfortable with their financial planning and budgeting control and cost controlling modules. So, standard costing is the basic tool of how the product is placed in the market and what is the standard cost of a product. So, how this is calculated will be coming one by one. So, first is standard cost. What is standard cost? As I told, is it is the cost that depends on all the that depends on all the costing. All the costs are clubbed together and then profit is added to it, and then this standard cost is calculated. So once this standard cost comes out, so we have the manufacturers and consumers and providers and other service dealers have more control over their budgeting, over their planning, over their profiting, and over their manufacturing modules and processes. So realistic estimates of cost based on analysis of both past and projected operating cost and conditions. Standard cost, realistic estimates of cost based on analysis of both past and projecting operating costs and conditions. First thing is that we take the benefit of the past, and again we take the projected cost and we take the future cost at the same time, and then we standardize the cost. For example, if we were selling a product for 20 rupees yesterday, and for tomorrow we would be selling projected cost is 22, because of various expenses that are increased, the cost will also increase. So the product cost is 22 rupees. So 22 is the projected cost, and based past cost is 20 rupees. So we would standardize so that there is not very much deficiencies, not very much gap in 20 and 22. So we have to neutralize the gaps, we have to remove the jerks, and we have to smoothen the costs so that we earn good profit margin as well as we control the cost in the market. So second, realistic estimates of cost based on analysis of both past and projected operating costs and conditions. Second is three components of standard costing. What are the three components? One is predetermined performance level, predetermined performance level, uh, a measure of actual performance, and then a measure of variance between standard and actual performance. So cost is also based on the functionality of a product. We are selling a fan of 1,000 rupees, and if its performance is below the predetermined performance. Actually, it was calculated to run for 10,000 hours, but because of actual conditions or because of some discrepancies, it could not run 10,000 hours. So we will take the performance level when next time we are calculating. We are the next time the performance level was 10,000. Predetermined performance level was 10,000 hours, but actual performance is 9,000 hours. So next time, obviously, next time when we are going to sell this product for 1,000 bucks, we won't be able to sell this product for 1,000 bucks because we claim that it would be running for 10,000 hours, but ultimately it couldn't do. So what we have to do, we have to reduce the cost in order to match, in order to get place in the market, and in order to sell our products. At the same time, it could also be high performance. We expected 10,000 hours, but it exceeded 10,000 hours and it went on for 12,000 hours. So that means it performed good. So actual performance is the higher than the predetermined performance level. So obviously the jerk or the increment in the cost, next cost is going to take place. A measure of variance between standard and actual performance. So when we define the difference between these two, so this will depict and this will explain the future cost that is going to take place, and future cost or standard cost. So these are the these three components of standard costing are predetermined performance, actual performance, and the difference between a variance between standard and actual performance. So these three performance are basic components of standard costing and are very much considered for standardization of costs. So second is how standard costing differs from actual costing and normal costing. So standard costing is that standard costing uses estimate costs exclusively to compute all three elements of products: direct material cost, direct labor, and overhead. That means standard costs are basically taken the three the direct factors that are involved. Once are three direct factors are: once are direct material, the actual material that is consumed for making a job, and then direct material, the actual labor that is consumed, that is producing the part, actual worker that is producing the wages of actual worker that is producing the part, and overheads are miscellaneous or expenses that includes officials, that includes watchmen, and that includes all other things. So these are clubbed together, these are added together for estimating the standard cost. So standard cost uses eliminated cost exclusively to compute all three elements of product cost: direct material cost, direct labor cost, and overheads. Then how managers use standard costs for planning and control in the management process. Planning, of how this standard costing affects the planning and performing, because if we are able to define standard cost in future, we would be going to give a good plan of production. So planning is affected by the standard costs for budget development, product costing, pricing, and distributions. All these standard costs are, all these costs are related with the planning of the future production. So this way, standard costing is taken into account and is for the future planning. So performing, for measurement of expenditures and cost of controls of cost as they occur. Performing is, as we discussed in the last slide, that performance is taken, actual performance is taken into consideration, and it is compared with the standard performance, predetermined standard performance. So when this predetermined standard performance, there is a gap or there is a variation between these two, this is going to affect cost either in positive direction or negative direction. So performance has a considerable impact on costing. So these two are, planning and performing are two major factors that are utilized, that are taken into consideration while costing a product. So again, evaluating and communicating. For variance analysis, as I discussed, the difference between the predetermined standard cost and the actual cost, the difference between these two, and this variance analysis is for evaluating the process and communicating for variance reports. So this is the this is the basic standard costing. And the primary difference between standard costing in a service organization and standard costing in a manufacturing organization, that a service organization has no direct material cost. Okay, so as all of you know, service is basically a module of running and overhauling of a part or product. So there is no, the component is first manufactured and then it is serviced. Second time, when we are going to service a product, there is no direct material cost. So no direct material cost and no material is consumed because the material is already produced. Although although direct labor cost is involved because the technicians and mechanics who are overhauling the machine or automobile are included. So they do have direct labor cost but no direct material cost in case of servicing. In a standard costing system, costs are entered into materials, work in process, and finished goods inventory accounts and cost of goods sold account. Standard cost and actual cost are recorded separately. So, in a standard costing system, costs are entered into materials. Costs are entered into materials. That means we have to take the cost of the material, work in process also, how much cost is involved while making the work in progress, and finished goods inventory cost. Finished goods, that means how much finished goods are stored in our factory for dispatch. So that cost is also involved in standard costing system. Material cost, work, WIP, work in process. That means all the material that running in the inside the factory or manufacturing facility is taken into consideration, whether it is raw material or the raw material being transformed into finished goods or finished goods stored for dispatch. So all these material, total material is taken into consideration for a standard costing system. So cost of goods sold accounted at standard cost, actual cost are recorded separately. Okay, so these two, cost of goods, goods inventory counts and cost of goods sold accounted at standard cost, actual cost are separately recorded. So these are two placed at different segments, and one is sold account at standard cost and actual cost are that is how much actual cost are uh, of the product. So these two are placed at different places. So the following elements are used in determining a standard cost per unit. Direct material cost, as we earlier discussed so many times, direct material quantity standards, direct material price standard, direct material quantity standard, direct labor, direct time, how much labor rate and how much time, how much standard time will it take, and standard variable overhead rate and standard fixed overhead rate. And what are other overheads, what are the other expenses that are involved while producing a part. These are called overheads, and so we have to take direct material price standard, how much standard quantity should be used, material quantity should be used, direct labor rate, and at the same time direct labor time, standard direct labor time is taken into consideration, whereas overheads are also considered. So these are the elements that are used for calling standard cost per unit. Now how standards are developed, this is another question that arises. So this means direct materials price standards based on careful estimation of all possible price increases, changes in available quantities, and new sources of supply in the next accounting period. So direct material cost, that is basically all materials that we have procured, cost of all materials that we have to procure. Then there may be certain prices jump for next cycle of operation, that is also taken into consideration, because for next cycle of operations we have to sell. So we have to absorb those jump prices into the increased prices into the product. So we have to introduce the jump prices or increased prices into that standard cost. So these are also taken into considerations. Then direct material quantity standard is based on product engineering specifications. So all these are talking about standards. All these are about talking about standards. Then what we talk the difference between the standard and actual performance, and when at the if and each and every level we differentiate we differentiate between actual performance and the predetermined standard performance. So these are the factors. The direct labor rate standards defined by labor union contracts and company personnel policies. These are the standard rates that are taken into consideration rather than giving the actual rates to the workers. So these are the standard costing development factors. So these are another is direct labor time standards based on current time and motion studies of workers and machines and records of their past performances. And standard variable overhead rate and standard fixed overhead rate are found by dividing total budget variable and fixed overhead rate cost by appropriate application based. Standard direct materials cost is the product of direct material plus standard and direct materials quantity standard. Okay, so standard direct material cost is consists of two things. First is direct material, is how much standard material is supposed to be used and how much standard prices are supposed to be given. So these two are calculated for standard costing. Direct labor costs at the same time direct labor time. So these are the standard overheads. These are the factors. So a product standard unit cost is the sum of following: standard direct material cost, standard direct labor cost, standard overhead cost. Okay. So this way we got the basic idea of standard costing, and we can note a question from here. Direct material quantity use 5 pounds per unit. Then direct material price $0.05 per pound. Direct material, all these we have to, all these are given. So what we have to this is 0.5 pound per unit, direct material quantity standard 5 pound per unit, and this is the material price $0.05 per pound. So we'll multiply 5 pound by 0.05. This will be given as 0.25 pounds. Similarly, 0.0 multiplied by 10, this will give us at $0.1 0.1 per hour. And similarly, $0.5 per machine and point. So after multiplying, we get the standard cost of the uh, problem. 5 pound bag of sugar. This is using the following information. Compute the standard unit cost of 5 pound bag of sugar. So this way we can calculate the standard cost. So this is another. We have a budget, static budget data. So this is the direct material cost. Then direct material cost was budgeted at 3,57,000, but it actual cost consumed 3,61,000. So difference is 4,000. Similarly, direct labor cost, it was the uh, standard cost $10,325, but actually $11,779 were used. So there is a difference. Similarly, variable, indirect, direct. So all these are summed up, and similarly actual cost are summed up. So there is a huge margin between $3,89,375 and $3,94,940. So there is a difference of $5,539. So this is the difference between actual and the standard cost. So this way we will be finding budget formula. So this is the basic difference of budgeting. So variance analysis will be studying tomorrow. Today we have got to know about standardized costing or standard costing methods, in which we considered all the factors and how standard cost is calculated. Hope that everything is clear by now. And still, if it's not clear, so you may get in touch with me at my number. My number is known to you, 9069360400. Okay, bye for the time being.